Picture yourself on a ridge in southern France, 45,000 years ago. It's freezing. You're built for this. Barrel chest, arms like cable, a brain slightly larger than the one reading this sentence. Your family has held this valley longer than farming, writing, and every empire in history combined. You are the most successful animal in Europe. Then you see smoke on the far slope. It isn't yours. The people who lit it are thinner than you. Weaker grip, worse in the cold. And within a few thousand years, every descendant you'll ever have is gone, and theirs inherit the planet. Nobody hunted you down. That's the strange part. Today, Neanderthal is an insult, slouching brute, club in hand. That image came from one skeleton reconstructed in 1911, which turned out to belong to an elderly man crippled by arthritis. Here's what the last century actually turned up. Neanderthals ran Eurasia for over 350,000 years. They boiled birch bark into tar, a multi-step process requiring a fire starved of oxygen at a controlled temperature. They used pigment. They kept people alive who couldn't hunt. The Shanidar man in Iraq had a withered arm, a crushed eye socket, and healed bones proving he lived for years after injuries that should have finished him. These weren't cavemen scraping by. So what took them out? Three things were already closing in before we showed up. The first was climate. The last ice age didn't move in one direction, it lurched. Temperatures across Europe could swing violently inside a single lifetime, dragging forests and herds around the map. And roughly 39,000 years ago, a volcano under the Bay of Naples detonated in the largest eruption Europe has seen in 200,000 years, burying the continent in ash from Italy to Russia. The second was arithmetic. Neanderthals never had numbers. Estimates vary a lot, but the entire species may never have exceeded a few tens of thousands alive at once. A mid-sized town stretched from Wales to Siberia, and their genomes show what that does to you. Long runs of identical DNA inherited from both parents, the signature of cousins marrying cousins, generation after generation. The third one changed how researchers think about all of this. Isolation. In 2015, a Neanderthal was uncovered in a rock shelter above the Rhone Valley. Nicknamed Thorin. When his genome came back, it looked wrong. Far too ancient for the layer he was buried in. It took 7 years to untangle, and the answer was that Thorin's people had been genetically cut off for roughly 50,000 years. Another Neanderthal population lived about 10 days' walk away. The two never mixed. Not once. For 500 centuries. Now compare that to the newcomers. Homo sapiens hauled stone hundreds of kilometers from where it was quarried. Seashells turn up deep inland. That isn't migration, that's a network. Contact, trade, information moving between groups who weren't even related. And that's what settled it. Not a war. Bookkeeping. Run the numbers and it's brutal in its dullness. If one population's children survive to have children of their own even fractionally more often than another's, that gap compounds. Over a few hundred generations, a rounding error becomes a replacement. The models suggest you don't need modern humans to be smarter, stronger, or more violent. You just need a slightly better safety net and a steady trickle of new arrivals from the south. Nobody living through it would have noticed anything. No last stand, no final battle. A species leaking away at a rate too slow for any human eye to catch. Except they didn't entirely leak away. In 2010, the first Neanderthal genome was published, and it contained a result nobody was ready for. If your ancestry traces outside Africa, somewhere between 1 and 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal. Not poetically, literally. In your cells, right now. And this wasn't one chance encounter in a forest. DNA from ancient skeletons across Eurasia has pinned the mixing to a sustained window opening around 50,500 years ago, and running for roughly 7,000 years, peaking near 47,000. That's 7 millennia of two kinds of human living alongside each other and having children together. The Neanderthals didn't only vanish. A great deal of them was absorbed, but look closer, and something's missing. Of all that Neanderthal DNA scattered through modern people, 2 pieces are completely absent: the Y chromosome, passed father to son, and mitochondrial DNA, passed mother to child, both gone. One likely explanation is a rule biologists have known for a century. When 2 species interbreed, the offspring that come out sterile are usually the ones carrying 2 different sex chromosomes. In mammals, that means the sons. So the merger may have run mostly one direction and cost far more than it appears to. And there's a final piece, published this year. Researchers analyzing Neanderthal DNA from sites across Europe found that around 65,000 years ago, long before we were a factor, nearly every Neanderthal lineage on the continent disappeared. One group, in what's now southwestern France, rode out the worst of the glaciation and spread back across Europe. Every late Neanderthal ever sampled descends from that single surviving branch. Their genetic diversity bottomed out around 42,000 years ago, which is precisely when we walked in. Though I'll flag this one, it's contested. A separate study this year found Neanderthals in Belgium still carrying healthy variation right to the end. So where did the Neanderthals go? They napped their tools and cooked their glue. They buried their dead. They marked cave walls. They nursed the injured through winters that should have killed them. They lived through ice age after ice age and ran out of room in the last one. They didn't run out of skill. They ran out of people. And then they walked into our family tree and stayed there. Your immune system carries their genes. So does your skin, your sleep, your response to certain viruses. There is no last Neanderthal grave to visit. There's a mirror,